ASMR True Crime channel. Today I will talk about the case of Menhaz Zaman. Menhaz Zaman was a young Canadian man with a bright future. He was studying mechanical engineering at York University, or at least that's what he led his parents to believe. In reality, he was never even accepted into the school's program. Instead of coming clean about his failure, he continued to allow the deceit to grow. As the years passed, his double life became harder to hide, and with a supposed graduation mere days away, Menhaz would snap in the most horrific of ways. Not only would he ultimately murder his entire family, but he was determined to make it known as many people as he could. One by one, he would post pictures of his criminal actions to an online Discord community. Although initially thought to be a sick joke, one by one, his online friends realized that his violent actions were in fact all too real. Without knowing his full name, age, or even country, the online Discord community was up against the clock to reveal his true identity and stop any further murders from happening. But would they find Menhaz in time? And how many lives would he ultimately claim? Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've enjoyed the content, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world and will help me share more stories with you. Stay connected and let's make this journey even more exciting together. Our story today begins with a hardworking man from Bangladesh named Menhaz Zaman, happily married to his wonderful wife Mumtaz, together the Zaman family. Mumtaz, who was born in India, and the couple had lovely ambitions for their future family. They decided that in order to achieve the lives they desired, it was best for them to leave their home countries and find a new place to begin a family. So 2 years later, the two migrated to the great city of Toronto in Canada. Fast forward 6 years, Menhaz and Mumtaz gave birth to their first son named Menhaz. And to complete their family picture, they welcomed their daughter Melissa into the world 2 years later. Menhaz and Mumtaz were naturally brilliant parents, with the family's mother being particularly close with her children. Friends describe Mumtaz as a lovely and pleasant person who is known to be generous, caring, and kind. She spent so much of her time helping those she cared the most about. This included driving them to the appointments, offering a way to pay for shared meals, or even making some of her famous dinner dishes, which, of course, she learned back home in India. All in all, Mumtaz was a well-liked and well-respected woman in her neighborhood and the Bangladeshi expat community alike. Menhaz was more of an introverted type when compared to his wife, but that doesn't mean he wasn't equally well respected. Described as a humble yet proud man, he was a deeply devoted Muslim that loved his family above all else. He worked as a taxi driver throughout Toronto's metropolitan area, dedicated and with many years of experience. He had an excellent understanding of the area that he serviced. As such, he received multiple Employee of the Month awards and was recognized as one of the most outstanding taxi drivers in his company. With both parents being ambitious immigrants, they naturally had high expectations for their children. Menhaz and Mumtaz believed that Menhaz and Melissa would go on to work in high-paying, respectable jobs that would lead to comfortable and prosperous lives. Although these humble parents didn't have much fortune while growing up, they were determined to give their children the opportunities they deserved. However, a house close by in Danforth. Mamatas took the responsibility of being the rental manager for both of these properties, and slowly but surely over time, the family's wealth grew while they rented out both houses. However, the Zaman family had also been growing over the years, and the now mother of two felt overburdened with the responsibility of 2 children and 3 properties. Her mother, Feroza, moved from India into the family household, allowing Mamatas to focus on her 2 children and have a healthy work-life balance. By the year of 2006, they purchased a larger 4-bedroom house in the nearby city of Markham, which was also home to a thriving Bangladeshi community. Now, at the time, it was very common to think that in order to succeed in life, one had to be in some sort of occasional job like engineering or medicine. And of course, Mamatas took that mentality to heart and pushed both their children in that direction, as did the father. Melissa had dreams of becoming a neurosurgeon, and as for Menhaz, he was to become an engineer. However, despite their plans for their children to succeed, their paths to success were not going to be easy. Melissa was definitely more of a wild child, and although she was able to succeed academically, she often rebelled and pushed back against her parents. Known for sneaking out, drinking, and smoking weed, she enjoyed actively challenging the authority in her household. This predictably was often met with strict and even questionable discipline too. If Melissa broke her curfew, her father would lock her out of the house, forcing her to sleep outside. Being the caring mother, Mamatas would often be the one to secretly unlock the back door and let her daughter back in. But apparently, Melissa and her father's arguments sometimes got so bad that neighbors would call the police out of concern. Her older brother, Menhaz Zaman, however, had a quite different temperament. Described as shy and reclusive, he was known to be his mother's favorite. Mamatas cared for her son so much that she would often go out of the way just to do anything for him. If he ever needed a ride, she would often be there to pick him up. She would cook his meals, clean his room, and always pick him up from school, all to give him a homemade lunch. Being the firstborn, Menhaz felt considerable pressure from his parents to succeed and conform to their exacting standards. But while he wasn't in school or studying, he did use his free time to escape the real world and play video games, often diving into MMO games such as Perfect World. In Perfect World, Menhaz was able to play as an avatar of his very own creation, and through his avatar he could interact with, play with people all across the world. Free from his normal shy and insecure personality, his game would quickly become a form of sanctuary for Menhaz, and in return he quickly became obsessed, spending all of his free time there. The only other place he spent quite a lot of his time was at the mosque with his father. Otherwise, he was in his room playing with his online friends as he moved into his senior year of high school. Menhaz had some very exciting news to share with his parents. Apparently, he had just been accepted into York University's mechanical engineering program. Now, of course, Monroe and Mamatas were extremely pleased to hear the news, and this solidified his position as the golden child of the family. While on the outside, this may have seemed like a good thing, in reality, it put even more pressure on Menhaz to succeed, giving him less room for mistakes or in this community. The environment here was normally quite positive, with people forming genuine connections with others through the game. Many even stayed in contact for years after. Now, for someone so shy in the outside world, this was a place where Menhaz thrived. He likely felt much more comfortable expressing his true and authentic self in this game, which is quite the contrast compared to the tense and demanding environment that he was used to at home. While Menhaz disconnected from the real world through his game, his sister continued to lash out and challenge her parents. At one point, even getting arrested for shoplifting, but fortunately for her, her charges were later dropped in exchange for community service hours. She eventually moved out of the home to live with her boyfriend, but despite her departure, Menhaz could still feel the residual tension that his sister left behind. This increase in pressure pushed him to once again recede even further into his game, of course further blocking out the world around him. While Melissa began to move away from her parents' expectations, the parents turned toward their son as the saving grace of the family. They often spoke to their community about his accomplishments and would brag about how he was on track to be an engineer, just like they wanted. However, Menhaz had one very big secret. He grumbled he wasn't attending York University at all. In fact, he had never been accepted. In reality, he was attending a much less prestigious school named Seneca Community College, and to top it all off, apparently, his grades were abysmal too. His non-curricular life was not too peachy either. All he did was play video games, and he had also become an atheist, which would be sure to upset his parents. He also complained about his lack of independence from his family and often complained about how his mom and dad controlled every aspect of his life. This extended into his love life too. Menhaz was actually dating a woman online, but his parents were extremely unhappy about it, and of course this grated on him. Foreign hungered for some sort of control or autonomy in his life, and it looks like he found this through the game Perfect World alongside his friends and the Discord community. Now, despite initially doing well in school, his grades began to slip as he became more obsessed with the game. He began to skip classes and even, for the first time in his life, started to fail subjects. It eventually got to the point where Menhaz was having to repeat almost all of his preliminary classes, and with having little interest left in university, he officially stopped going to class entirely, eventually deciding to solely focus on his gaming life. While all of this was going on, his parents had no idea what was happening. They still believed that he was attending York University, and the longer that this lie continued, the harder the truth would be to swallow. Despite not actually attending any classes, Menhaz would still travel to the campus daily. However, instead of going to class, he would set his laptop up in the cafe and play Perfect World. He would then go to the gym, work on accounts, travel back home, and continue playing late into the night. As Menhaz continued to play instead of studying, he sometimes mentioned to his online friends that he was thinking about leaving the game for good. He would often darkly joke about how he was going to jail soon, though his friends didn't know why. Although the average person may see those messages and find them concerning, Menhaz apparently was well known for posting edgy and often disturbing humor like this in this Discord, so to all of his friends around him, it didn't seem to ring any alarm bells. He was also known for joking about homophobia, religion, and other sensitive topics, but with this being a gaming community, no one paid any real attention to his negative comments. As time passed by, it became apparent that his humor was becoming darker and much more sinister. Menhaz was trying to provoke reactions from the group, and his jokes were becoming so offensive that it resulted in multiple week bans from the community. Safe to say, Menhaz clearly didn't have much going on in his real life, and now that he was banned from Perfect World, he had time to realize the gravity of his ongoing lies. He couldn't keep the facade up for much longer. The year was now 2019, and he was 4 years into his impressive deception, which also meant that by the end of this summer he was supposed to graduate. To stop his parents from learning the truth, he gave them a fake graduation ceremony date of July 28. As that date loomed even closer, he began to exhibit even more disturbing and sinister behavior online. Changing his online name to Subhuman and Stone to Serve Life, he began to joke about taking his own life and talked about how he felt to be consumed by worldlessness. Perhaps due to his normalized toxic behavior in the past, but the people he chatted to barely took any notice of these messages. If anything, they most likely saw as a sad kid simply looking for attention. While Menhaz fretted and began to spiral even further, his sister was beginning to mend her relationship with their parents. After moving back in with the family, she herself actually began to attend York to study science. From an outsider's perspective, the family seemed to be happy and successful, with new beginnings and an increasingly positive future. Realizing that he was about to lose his title as the golden child, one member of the family was about to carry out the unthinkable. It was July 27th in 2019. It was a Saturday, the day before Menhaz's alleged graduation ceremony. Throughout the morning, all other members of the family headed out to work. Monrose hopped into his taxi cab, Mamatas headed to a property, and Melissa headed to a part-time job at the grocery store. To put things short, the day began like any other workday, and at around 3 p.m., Menhaz's mother and grandmother headed upstairs to go for a nap, which was just part of the daily ritual. It was during this time, and while knowing their schedule, that Menhaz had maniacally made his first move, thus beginning a terrible series of actions that would change the family forever. Silently breaking into his mother's bedroom, he struck her over the head with a crowbar, knocking her unconscious, and afterwards, to make sure he finished the job, he cut her throat before walking out of the room and back down his computer, opening up Discord as he'd done thousands of times before. He prepared to send the first of multiple graphic messages for all of the members of the community to see. He posted a picture of his mother's bloodied body with the murder weapon lying next to her. Shortly after, he went upstairs again, crowbar in the hand, and did the very same thing to his grandmother, and just as before, he calmly walked downstairs, opened Discord, and then posted the gruesome evidence of his crime. Those more accustomed to Manna's dark humor, assumed that this was just likely another sick joke. However, other people who were not so familiar with his behavior were quite alarmed. Both photos appeared to be extremely realistic and seemed unlikely to be a hoax. After these photos, Menhaz posted a message to say, "I killed my mom and granny so far, waiting for my sister in 5 minutes and my dad in an hour." It was at this moment that other gamers started to take him seriously, recognizing that the situation was potentially an ongoing murder spree. By now, several Discord users were convinced that they were experiencing multiple homicides right in front of their eyes, and even worse, there was nothing they could do to stop it. Gamers scrambled to try and figure out who this man was, to try and stop any further murders from occurring. But Menhaz had long been both coy and covert. Nobody knew his name, age, or even the country that he lived in. One of Menhaz's closest online friends, named Junior, was messaged by several other people within the Discord community. These messages spurred him into action, and he asked Menhaz if these images were in fact real. Menhaz responded by saying that sadly they were, and furthermore he was going to kill both his father and sister in the coming hours. And even worse, there was nothing that anybody could do. Several agonizing minutes later, Melissa returned home to an eerily silent house, and only after she closed the door and walked further into the house to investigate was she met with Menhaz. Her brother attacked her in the same manner as he did their mother and grandmother, with the crowbar in hand. And after her death, Menhaz took once again a photo of her body, and this time privately sending it to another friend of his Discord community named John. He captioned the message saying that his sister had fought him for almost 10 minutes, both crying and screaming the entire time. Another private message read, "Literally told my parents my uni graduation was on July 28th. I couldn't have delayed it any longer. I did this because I don't want my parents to feel the shame of having a son like me. I am a pathetic coward and a superhuman." Menhaz then sent John more pictures, including a picture of the murder weapon, and even more disturbing, a selfie with the blood-stained knife. Horrified, John sent those photos to the rest of the group, proving that Menhaz had gone through with a murder, a third murder. Members of the Discord community were sensibly saving them immediately, ensuring that they could build as much evidence against Menhaz as possible. Menhaz went back to playing his game as if nothing had happened, waiting until around midnight when his father eventually came home. The young man was all ready to catch his father off guard, and after Monoro walked into their garage, he too was bludgeoned over the head. This was met with a familiar knife. Afterwards, as with all other members of his family, Menhaz then posted a photo to the Discord community, who knew that, despite their best efforts, had failed to stop his monstrous plan. Replying to one of the users, Menhaz wrote, "I am a pathetic coward and a superhuman. Since I am an atheist, I believe there is no afterlife, so I was scared to die, and I wanted them to die so they didn't suffer, knowing how much of a pathetic subhuman I was. It's all very selfish, I'm just pathetic." To another friend he wrote, "I've just slaughtered my entire family, and I will likely spend life in jail if I manage to survive. I'm sorry. Do you want the pics? Menhaz sent countless messages to his friends later that night, apologizing for his actions while sharing images of the murder scene. But not all was lost in finding their killer. In fact, they were just about to get lucky. One of the members of the community eventually worked out how to acquire Menhaz's IP address. An IP address is a unique identifier for internet-connected devices that can give an indication of their geographical location. If they could find it and then connect it to a home address, they might have a shot at alerting the police to the location of their online acquaintance. With this valuable information collected, his location had been whittled down to the city of Toronto. One of the Discord members, who was located in Minnesota, contacted his local police department, who then transferred him into Toronto PD. After forwarding Menhaz's name and IP address, officers got to work with the concerning details. Friends kept him engaged in the meantime, one asking, "What will you do with the rest of your time? At this point the action is done." Menhaz replied with, "Eat junk food, visit my girlfriend, drink and smoke. I never drank alcohol or cigarettes." From here on out, it was simply a matter of time. Responding officers were able to track the IP address, contact the local service provider, who were then able to give the actual address to where Menhaz's family lived. You'd think that for someone as obsessed with both gaming and computers, you would have thought that Menhaz would have used some kind of VPN to hide his location. So I guess it looks like that golden child was not actually that intelligent to begin with. 12 hours after the first murder occurred, officers were knocking on the front door of the Zaman residence, and after peering upwards, they noticed a figure looking at them through the front bedroom window. Now at this point in time, officers did not have that much to work with. All they knew is that members of an online community were making bizarre and dark claims. However, Menhaz was ready to make it easy for them. After sending a final message on Discord which said, "The police are here, goodbye," he made his own way downstairs, opened the door, and gave himself up to the authorities, asking him who's home. When I asked, he replied, "My family." When another officer asked where they were, Menhaz replied with, "You'll see." As the authorities began to explore the silent home, its morbid secrets were revealed. After an officer stumbled over one of the bodies, Monoro and Melissa were found first. Then came the discovery of Mamatas and finally the grandmother. Toronto PD immediately placed Menhaz under arrest on suspicion of homicide before transporting him to the local police station for processing and interrogation. During his interview, Menhaz seemed entirely unfazed as he recounted the events, almost as if it meant absolutely nothing to him. He was eventually charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of second-degree murder. The case was essentially a slam dunk in court, as the Perfect World community that had been monitoring the case in real time had saved every message sent by Menhaz. They meticulously achieved every piece of media sent during his murderous rampage, incriminating him beyond any reasonable doubt. Addressing the court during his sentencing, he said, "I would like to apologize to anyone I have negatively impacted with my actions, especially to the people who knew my family, friends, and loved ones, who I know could have never seen something like this come from me." November 2020, Menhaz Zaman was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for the first 40 years of his sentence. At the age of just 24, he won't have the possibility of freedom until he's at least 64 years old. He now remains behind bars to live out the rest of his sentence, punished for taking the lives of 4 beautiful people that cared for him so much at the time of their deaths. His father, Menhaz Zaman, was 59 years old, his mother, Pamatas, 50, his grandmother, 70, and his sister, just 21. Despite his parents sacrificing everything for him, he paid them back in the worst of ways. And now nothing is left at the Zaman family except for one dangerous killer with the blood of his family on his hands. That's it for the case of today. I'm going to wrap this one up here, but as always, thank you so much for watching and for making it this far in my video. So, what are your thoughts on this case? Do you think that Menhaz's sentence was strict enough? And do you think his family put too much pressure on him? If you found this case interesting or you haven't done so yet, then please consider subscribing. It really does help me and my channel out. So until